My name is Geetha. I'm a GP. I also work for Bupa as a panel doctor, but most of what I'm going to be talking about today is based on my experience and knowledge as a GP. So, preparing for life with a newborn. Are most people here having their first baby? Yeah, I see some nods. Yep. So, if there's anyone having baby number 2, 3, 4 or more, please feel free to, pitch in and share some of your experiences and tips. Mums, you're the most important part of the puzzle. So I'm going to spend a fair bit of time talking about, your self-care, nutrition in pregnancy. There seems to be a lot of emphasis on what to avoid, what not to eat. People would talk about, salmonella, risk of listeria, try and avoid soft cheeses and raw meats, etc. Yes, all of those things are true, but risk of those things are actually quite rare. I tend to like to tell my patients to actually focus a little bit more on getting a wholesome, nutritious diet. So, getting your grains, fruits, veggies, dairy, meat. 2 nutrients that women tend to skimp on tends to be calcium and iron. So if you can eat dairy, if you can eat meat, get your 3 serves of dairy, low fat if you wish, and 2 to 3 serves of red meat per week. People who do have dietary restrictions may actually need to supplement. Most people would have started a supplement, a folate supplement, even prior to pregnancy, and that's a really good idea. Exercise-wise, unless you're an elite athlete or play competitive sports, there's no need to change your exercise regime. So cycling, swimming, walking, running, anything. You can even do weight training, obviously not too heavy. If you're at any point worried that your exercise regime might be too intense for pregnancy, speak to an exercise physiologist, a personal trainer at a gym, and they might be able to actually tailor a program that's a bit more suited to you during a pregnancy. Contact sports, you're told to avoid contact sports, not because it's too intense, but simply because there's a small risk of injury, so direct trauma to the abdomen, and a risk of falls. Your emotional well-being, just as important as your physical health, so make sure you keep up your interests, socialize. If at any point you feel down, you feel blue, talk to your friends, talk to your GP, talk to your family about it. There's always support and help available out there. We've all heard about the benefits of breastfeeding, both for mum and the baby. Only if it works for you. Don't let people try and push you into breastfeeding if it just doesn't work for you. Some people, breastfeed really easily, they don't have any problems, and others struggle. And it just depends. There's a lot of help available, again, if you do have problems. People who do exclusively breastfeed, it's also a good idea to express and feed your baby through a bottle once in a while, just to get them used to it. And that's just because, a few months down the track, if mum wants to go out, wants to get back to work, your baby will actually accept the bottle. Babies who are actually exclusively breastfed, come 6 months, mum wants to go back to work, your baby might actually refuse the bottle, and that poses a problem. Recovery-wise, it takes about 2 to 3 months for the uterus to go back to its normal size. It takes that time for all the fluid to go away. Some people lose the pregnancy weight that they gain within a few weeks, and for others they never lose it. So it's quite individual, and you might need to find ways to lose that weight gradually. Breastfeeding does help. It's important to establish expectations between partner and you. You might think that you've been together for a while, you've got things worked out, but a third person in the family does change things. So make sure you've talked about parenting styles beforehand. Talk about who's how involved your partner is going to be, who's going to do the cooking, cleaning, washing, the chores, and also looking after the baby, feeding the baby. There's a unique bond between the 3 of you when your new baby comes into the picture, but do remember that you're also a couple. Some people plan date nights, people get the extended family involved in looking after the kids to allow them to spend time together. When to get back into the physical stuff, it's really up to the mum. Sorry, Dad, she decides when she's ready. All right. Broader supports. Your mother's group is likely to be your main support if it's, if you're a nuclear family. Your maternal and child health nurse usually links up a few mums who live in the area together. It's a good source of information where you can share experiences, share tips on how to go about things. If you do have family close by, get them involved. Again, a good resource, helpful when you need someone to care for the baby, particularly if you need to go away. Friends, you might find that you start to drift away from some of your friends, particularly those who don't have kids, after you do have kids, and that could be because people with kids tend to talk about their kids all the time. But also, you just might not have the time. Priorities change. You might not have the time to have a night out with your friends like you used to. You might not be able to play sport with them like you used to. Your house isn't going to be yours anymore. It's going to be a complete mess. There'll be 30% more stuff everywhere. The most important thing here is safety. You certainly don't want to walk into the kitchen to find your toddler with a kitchen knife. Or into the laundry, to find your toddler chugging at some bleach. So think of those things, lock the cupboards, put things away. There are safety kits available to protect power points in cupboards, and they're good. Your bath, try and make sure it's the right size. Too big isn't good because baby is quite slippery and just swims around. But too small isn't going to do the trick either. The most important thing about your car is that it has to be big enough. So if you've got a hot convertible, you might need to swap it for an SUV. Maybe not an SUV, but a four-door car at the very least. You want to have a baby kit of some sort in your car, so wipes, extra nappies, think about some window shades to protect your baby from the sun. This first-time dad phenomenon. So when a dad has a newborn baby, he drives like he's driving a brand new car. And that's a good thing. Perhaps make it last longer than a day. All right. Professional support, there are lots of people out there. Your number one support initially and through the first few months would be your maternal and child health nurse. They will first make contact with you when you actually are sent home from the hospital, and you'll have scheduled weekly or monthly appointments for checkups with them. They do this, every day, all day. They've got, lots of experience. So ask them to tell you, ask them to show you what you don't know. Your obstetrician and your midwife, your contact with them ends at about day 2 postpartum, and after that it's your GP who takes over. So if you don't already have a regular family doctor, make sure you find one. You'd think, as a young adult, you might not have seen your GP very often at all, but that usually changes when you have a little one. A lactation consultant, in most hospitals you'll be seen by one in the first day or two after birth. If things are going okay, they might not ever see you again, but if you do have difficulty with breastfeeding, arrangements can be made for them to come to your home and follow up. Most babies either sleep really well or feed really well. Some do both terribly, but very rarely are they great at both. That's every parent's dream. So babies who you struggle to settle, there are sleep schools, there are sleep consultants who can help. Google will give you some suggestions, but ask your maternal and child health nurse or your GP for some recommendations if you find yourself struggling with settling the baby. Immunizations. This is a big topic. I think we had a presentation before about it. But as a GP, I'm naturally quite pro immunizations. There's a concept called herd immunity where if 99% of the population is actually vaccinated, it reduces the spread of the disease along within the community. Whereas if you think of, if only 50% of people are vaccinated, an unimmunized person can actually contract the disease and spread it on to other people who are not vaccinated. So you might have heard of a recent measles outbreak in Melbourne. There are about 15 cases, 15 confirmed cases, particularly in an area where the immunization rates are actually a little bit lower than the rest of the city. So that sort of illustrates the point about the benefit of everyone, almost everyone being immunized. It's not without risks, obviously. There is a 1 in 100,000 risk of an anaphylactic reaction where your airways close up and there's difficulty breathing, and that's the reason why we make sure immunizations are held in a facility that's appropriate, that that sort of condition can be treated. Small risk of having a little bit of a temperature, a sore arm, but in order to protect kids, yourself for life from a host of diseases that could potentially be deadly, I think it's worthwhile the risk. Now, people have differing opinions on immunizations. They might have concerns. If you do, talk to your nurse or your doctor about it. You want to get the facts, weigh up the facts, and make an informed decision. Lots of people will try and tell you to do things, and you'll get advice from family, friends, relatives. It's good to take on board that advice. If it doesn't work for you, discard it. If it works for you, great. So just to finish off, the baby, what is it? Can't feed itself, can't move, it can't talk. All it does is cry and make a racket. And the reason it does that is because it wants food to grow, to develop. It knows mum really well. Mum's the primary source of its food, but it's still trying to get acclimatized to the environment, new sounds, new lights. You want to help it get acclimatized. So an example, a way of doing things would be, if your baby is unsettled, you know that your baby will actually settle down if mum goes in and gives it a pat. Perhaps send dad in so it actually gets acclimatized to dad and knows that dad can give it that comfort too. So just a bit of a tip. Everyone who's having their first baby will have this first time syndrome. You feel that you're doing things wrong, you feel like you're being a bad parent. No, you're not. That's just how everyone feels. The second time around is a little bit easier, but might not be because you've got number one in the way. How to react in a crisis, it's if you know first aid, it can be helpful, but number one thing to do, take a deep breath, check your pulse, call for help. Mother's intuition, I believe in your mum's intuition, and if you think something's wrong, if you're unsure, go to your ED, go to your GP, seek help. Okay? So that's all I have for today.